Hey guys, here's the gear for today. Continuing on with using the Nacet blade. We're going to talk about that more in a second. And we're going to try the Fatip. This is the Mark 1 of the open comb of the Fatip. The current version I believe is Mark 2 or version 2. I don't know quite what nomenclature they prefer. But this is the original and it's a little more aggressive than what's currently out there because the top cap here is not as wide. The brush is the same one I used recently, the Wolf Whiskers handle, and what is this? This is the Oumo, the Oumo Manchuria Super High Density Knot. The soap, as you can see, is Henri and Victoria Cognac and Cuban cigars. And I was just, as I was prepping everything, I actually had my little pipe going for a few puffs. And so I do have the tobacco kind of air going on around here. Who knows? You know, one thing that can do is actually make you not be able to perceive a tobacco scent here because you already have that in your nose. But we'll just see. It's a fun soap anyway. It's a good performing base here. This is their newer, triple milled version of their soap. So I'm going to get this brush. I was talking to Alan recently in the comments. He mentioned that he just recently got the Maggard SHD knot, and it's similar to this one. Matter of fact, it comes from the same company. It's an Oumo knot as well. As I load the blade up here, it's an Oumo knot. Oumo makes a few different of these types of badger knots. They make one called the HT, I think. This is the Manchuria, and it's kind of the softest of the group. Maybe a little bit less backbone, but I purposely mounted this knot high so that it would lessen the backbone by quite a bit, or as much as possible. All right, here are the markings on the blade there. And the HT, I think for hand-tied, the HT version is not the same as what we're using today, but the HT is the one that Maggard is using as their house SHD knot. And it's gotten very, very good reviews. If you've seen the price of brushes like Declaration Grooming and those other hand-tied knots that are finest badger that have the tips treated, then that whole family of knots, they can be quite expensive when you order them from certain places. I think Mozingo has that ZT something as well. You've got newer companies like Wald. You've got a bunch of people that have jumped into this market. But if you can't afford that, and many of us can't, then look into this Maggard SHD knot or go directly to Oumo and buy them there. I'm so glad I bought this knot. It's my favorite. I do have the Maggard version as well. That's the HT. This is the Manchuria. I like the Manchuria a little better, but the HT is still wonderful. The Maggard version is still very nice. All right, so there we go. Now, this may be a razor that is too mild for this blade at this age. It's not a mild razor. I'd put it kind of right in the middle. Some people rate it as a little bit aggressive, but for me and my shaving technique, it's kind of right in the middle. It's efficient, but very comfortable. And so, but I usually, right now, with this blade being as old as it is, what are we looking at? 484. Today's count, 484. Is what today's shave will be. With that many uses on it, I usually find that razors that like it, that work well with it, are ones that are actually a little more aggressive than my preference range if I'm using a younger blade, a more normal blade. All right. This hasn't been used in a while, and so why don't we do a 20-second load? 25 might be something I might use if I was thinking just in case. Okay, I've convinced myself. 25 seconds, unless it looks like I'm picking up a lot of soap. We're starting at the 30 mark, so we'll go to 50 or 55. Yeah, let's do that. We'll go to 50 or 55. Their previous version of soap was a little lackluster in the creaminess department. Whenever I got it as wet as I wanted, it just wasn't as creamy as I wanted it to be, and it was kind of difficult to work. All right, that was a 25-second load. Let's just go with that. I'll take some of this stuff. Oh yeah, I'm not really good at pulling out the cognac scent. I have drunk a little cognac, but not very much. Oh, that is just enjoyable. I had some of the Henri and Victoria early on in my shaving that was the previous formula to this, and I enjoyed it. And I think what happened was I found better soaps that performed better in a manner, and maybe my technique changed. I started pushing more water into my soaps to really push that slickness up really high. And then I revisited those the original Henri and Victoria, and they kind of fell away. And so I was super happy with this because I like the company pretty well. I didn't like a lot of their scents. Some of them are on the female side, or the kind of that classic traditional English side of the scent spectrum that are kind of ladylike, but a lot of guys have shaved with it and have grown to like it because it's a part of shaving culture, but not me. And so especially I was so glad that they had the Cognac and Cuban cigars, because that's definitely manly. All right. With my face rinsed, we can start working on the lather. I like this knot so much. It's one of my favorites. Every time I use it, I wonder if maybe I should move it to a handle that I enjoy a little bit more. This is a short handle, and so it always makes my fingers very messy. We have started to feel a little bit dry as I was working the kind of early parts of the lather up there, so why not go ahead and start adding a little water to it now. It could be that I shook out more water from my brush than I usually do. It's kind of nice that Henri and Victoria would make a triple milled tallow version of their soaps, because these days a lot of people are, especially over on the European side, are like in the case of Cgnac, discontinuing the tallow for the favor of the vegan. Now the good news is we definitely have some good vegan formulas out there, and so in the case of a bunch of people switching to vegan and leaving tallow behind, we've still got, I think that means that the vegan market will just increase and will get better. And so that doesn't make me too sad. However, I do really enjoy a good tallow soap. Looks great. Took a lot of water to get it to that point. That's just fine. I do not have a huge amount of lather quite yet, but we're not done. And I also believe that it will be plenty to do the job. This brush splays a good bit, and so I'm very glad to have this larger bowl. So let's give this a test. It's looking pretty good visually. We'll do a little bit of a drop test. Wiggle it. Watch what happens. It drops. It kind of kept its shape, but it kind of morphed as well. And I do often find that I like to add water until it does kind of glop and then spread out some because of the weight of the water that's in it. So why don't we add just a little bit more water. So far we're looking at quite a bit. 26 milliliters added so far. That is above average. But soaps are just different. Oh, nice smell coming up from there. Kind of warm. I guess it's kind of the cognac and a light warm tobacco. So I guess if I'm smoking a one kind of tobacco, but then the tobacco notes in the soap here are a different kind, that could be very complimentary actually. All right, I think I'll go with this. It still feels like I could potentially need to add more water, but I'm going to play that by ear. See, look at that soupiness, the way it just kind of slid off. That might be a very good sign. Splash a little water on my face. And here we go. Henri and Victoria, about a day and a half growth. Yeah, I could definitely add more water. All right. See, you just have to rinse my hand a lot when I use this little short handle. And that's just a convenience thing, you know. And the handle's not super comfy, but it's pretty comfy. Comfy enough to keep using it. It's also a little sentimental. It's the first I bought that. That handle was made for a certain meetup, maybe 2019 in Greensboro, and that was the first one I ever went to. Matter of fact, so far it's the only one thanks to COVID, and hopefully I'll have the ability to go to more. All right, so here we go. Nacet, use number 484. We'll see if this, getting a little bit of tugging, but that's kind of normal for a day and a half of growth. What we'll have to see is if this razor will finish off the shave with a nice close finish. The first pass sometimes is that little bit of tug, and then the rest of them are all right. But in some of the razors where they're too mild to make good use of this blade, then they're really comfy because they're not doing a great job cutting, and I end up with a bunch of stubble that didn't quite get cut well enough. I know this is doing some damage. I can just see the difference visually, so that's good. Damage, and of course I mean that it's cutting stubble. And a quick splash of water. And I can leave my face a little dripping with this particular lather since it could use a little bit more water. Probably help it out a little bit. My Timeless Open Comb 68 that I used during austere August is a good razor for this blade right now, but if this one turns out good as well, then it's always nice to have a variation, another one to fall back to. And I do like to brag about the Fatips because I think they're just, other than maybe a vintage Gillette Tech, I think they are just one of the best values in the shaving industry. Because for $25, $28, something like that, you can get a razor like this. And the open comb for me works really well, comfortable, it's not aggressive to me. The closed comb is even greater in the smoothness department, so smooth, but still effective. And they both shave really well. And the composition, the materials is brass. And you can either get chrome plated, nickel plated, or the black finish. The black will eventually rub off in most cases, but the chrome seems to be the stronger of the finishes. But even if all the plating goes away, you're still left with a brass razor, which is a lifetime quality material. All for that low price. And so I think it just really deserves a place. It deserves to be mentioned. The design is really good. It's simple, it's elegant, but it works. One of the reasons I like it is because the comb, the base plate, is just a curved surface, and your blade is just laying across on the top of it, and the top cap goes all the very close to the edge, and so since it's got good support then from the top and the bottom close to the blade edge, and so that's just one of the reasons why it's so smooth. The blade has a very nice control. There are some quality control issues sometimes, but I've got about 8 of these things and none of them have significant issues. So while there is a small amount of risk, as long as you buy it from a vendor who accepts returns, like if you get one and the blade doesn't align properly. Oh, and I even forgot that you need to align these because this is not CNC milled, and so the blade can be may need to be tweaked, just like with the DE89 type razors and a lot of others. That you just have to check and make sure it's centered. Forgot to check it this time. I guess that shows you that you about half the time, maybe even more, I don't need to change anything. All right, a little splash of water. Oh, I feel the absence of the stubble in a significant way. This seems like a very good razor. I may even... Nah, I've got some stuff I need to get rid of there. Was that the second pass or the third? I think that was maybe the second pass. Felt very good though. Not the tugginess was only on that first pass. This is a smooth, kind of warm scent. Doesn't have any kick. It's not gonna, zesty. It's not gonna wake you up in the morning. So maybe it's a good evening scent, or if you want to pair it with something else that's kind of peppy, if you do like something to wake you up. I can tell there's more exposure here, or the blade is felt more. I think this one is actually feeling more than a newer blade would, and that's uncommon with this razor. Splash of water. And that feels even more smooth. So I think my cheeks are fine. I think that's 3 passes. Let's do my neck as a touch-up, and then I think we might be done. Two or 3 more passes of lather available there in the bowl. So that load time I did was definitely plenty. I especially like shorter strokes in the neck area because it really requires constant evaluation of your angle. And shorter strokes let you do that. When you do a stroke and you realize, nope, that's too sharp of an angle, you can back off. Now, what's the slickness like? Not a lot of residual slickness here. How about that? When you do spread the remnants of the lather around, you do get that slickness, but there's not a lot of residual. And so while I do enjoy this base, I do think other bases are going to be a little better because of that residual slickness, is my impression here. And I believe I've nailed the lather pretty well. I think the kind of slickness I'm feeling usually is not improved by more water. And then maybe this one might actually be better for me to back off and not put as much water in, so that I could play around with that, see if I can improve it. So what's the visibility here? I do see some length on some tips there, but I think that's an acceptable shave. So yeah, I'm gonna have to carry this razor back with me to my other location because it's a valid shaver of the Nacet here at this age. So that's a really good shave. The timeless probably is more comfortable doing the same amount of efficiency, so there might be a nod more to that. The fine platinum is the aftershave today. Let's see how it goes with the smokiness and the cognac. I'm gonna have a little excess in my hands, so why not just kind of spread it all over the place, right? Get a nice scent cloud going on. All right, so total water usage. I don't think I added any more. Yeah, once I told you the 26 milliliters. That was where I stopped. And here is how much lather I have left. Like I said, with this one, I may want to run it a little drier than my usual. At least 2 passes of lather still available there. So a good 6 or 7 passes was generated from that load. 25 seconds, I think. There we go. All right. I think that the Platinum here, which is a clone of Creed Aventus, I think it's working very well with the cognac and tobacco. Yeah, very nice. Do a little cleanup now. This is the top cap of the Fatip, and you can actually put other base plates between the Fatip top cap and the handle. The one, I think it's for the Gillette old type. The Fatip uses a different threading, which is why you can't just take any old handle and use it with a Fatip top part. But it's a good candidate for a Franken razor because you can try some of the different base plates, because this 3-pin design is quite common, and sometimes it'll work. So that's fun to play around with sometimes. This handle is the Grande handle. It is hollow. The Piccolo handle is thinner, but it's solid, and so it actually has a heftier feel. This one just has a thicker feel. The Cgnac razors, like the DE89s, the Parkers, the Muleys, the Jaggers, and the Mercurs, are so popular, but they tend to have problems with the bolt right here. The plating will eventually wear away, and when that plating is gone, they have the highly corrosive or corruptible pot metal, or Cgnac, or zinc alloy, is what they have in the core. But the Fatip has brass at the core, so when this plating wears away, you're left with brass, which is going to be just fine. And so that's why it's, to me, a much superior razor to any of those 4 brands that I just mentioned. And it shaves just really well. All right. Yeah, the scent of the Creed Aventus type is working very well with the ambient tobacco and stuff here. So there we are. With how well that did, it makes me think that maybe I should try the open comb, that is the modern version, the version 2, the Mark II of the Fatip line, because it might work really well. It might even work a little better with that one having a little bit more blade feel than I might want. So the soap did well. The razor did surprisingly well, because so many razors don't work with the blade at this age. And we continue on with the Nacet. And the brush was tremendous, really nice, felt great. And yeah, I did have to mount it really high, put in spacers. I do have a mounting video, how to set a shaving brush knot or something like that. If you search that, you might be able to find it. And so you put spacers in there with the silicone. And because I use silicone, if I do decide I love this knot so much someday that I want to put it in a nicer handle that's more ergonomic for me, then I can just yank it out because it's in silicone. However, it's still pretty much a permanent setup. It's not temporary at all. silicone that's used when done properly can be nigh permanent. It really often, at least in the case of me, anytime I've had a knot come apart when I've used silicone is because I tried to use as little as possible and I just used a little too less silicone. And it's pretty evident and pretty quick to come out. I just take off the waste, reapply, good to go. And I believe that happened with this one, maybe even twice. But now I've used it a bunch of times. It's all set. Very good. So that's today's shave. I hope that it helps you out in some way. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. Good night.